Welcome to Own the Season podcast. We will talk to industry insiders along with outdoor enthusiasts to help you own your season. Now let's join hosts Art and Michelle Helen with Brad Jones. Own the Season podcast is sponsored by Griffin Armament, the oldest privately owned silencer manufacturer in the United States. Go to griffinarmament.com to learn how you can get a silencer shipped to your door. Griffin Armament, engineered silence.
Hello and welcome to Own the Season podcast. I'm Michelle Helen along with Art Helen and Brad Jones. And today our special guest is good friend Randy Flannery from Wilderness Escape Outfitters. Hi, Randy.
Hi, how you doing?
Real good. It's so good to have you on the podcast. I was just thinking about you. We were talking with Brandon Sensky from Open Season Sportsman's Expo, and we just got talking about those shows and you know, how it's almost like a reunion and you get to see people, the other vendors, maybe just, you know, that one time a year or twice a year, whatever the show, how many shows you do, and how you get to know your booth neighbors. And you've been our booth neighbor recently.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know, Brandon does a great job and he's such a good kid and you know, I appreciate him so much. We've become great friends over the years, and he works hard, and he just does a great job.
Yeah. Are you going to be at Ohio this year?
Yeah, I'll be at Ohio and Wisconsin. I usually, believe it or not, I usually get on the road doing seminars in early January, and I don't go home till May. But if I have a break in between, we have a farm down in North Carolina that's bordered on two sides by thousands of acres of North Carolina state forest land. So we go down there. That's pretty much our winter residence. But I'm not there much because I'm on the road doing seminars, you know.
Sounds like it. So tell us more about what you do there at the Wilderness Escape Outfitters.
Well, we're right on the Washington County line, Washington, Aroostook County. Aroostook County is the largest county in the United States. And Washington County, the county we live in, is bigger than the state of New Hampshire, and there's only 33,000 residents in the whole county. So it's big woods, you know. The piece of woods across the road from us is 285,000 acres. There's 194,000 acres on our side of the road, and my wife and I lease over 500 square miles of woods for our business. We do bear, deer, moose. We do snowshoe hare, grouse and woodcock, bobcat, coyote. We fish over a dozen lakes, 5 rivers, close to 30 trout brooks. So we're pretty hard at it, pretty busy, and 74% of our customers are repeats. So, you know, we got some great guides working for us. I don't hire guides because of all the magazine exposure that we get. You know, Field and Stream's written at least one article on us a year since 2003. And because they're the largest, the rest of the magazines have all done articles on us. Matter of fact, in December, Peterson's Hunting did one on us. But I get a lot of guides calling me to go to work, and I don't hire them. I go after the ones I want because, you know, I used to coach and play quite a bit of football and baseball and hockey, and I look at an outfitter as being like a head football coach. You surround yourself with good coaches, they make you look good. So that's how I approach hiring guides, and we got some really good ones.
Now, and you're in Maine, is that correct?
Yep.
Okay. Well, it sounds like you do it all up there. I mean, that sounds like you must be very busy doing those hunts and fishing.
Yeah, we are very busy. Matter of fact, you know, we have, besides my son and I and another young man who's like our adopted son, we have a dozen guides working for us, and I'm in the process of hiring a few more right now because we do so much, and but it's all good, you know. It's you know, our what we're known for probably more than anything else is, you know, Dan Schmidt from Deer and Deer Hunting says we're the only outfitter in North America that actually teaches people how to go after their deer. So, all I do is I teach people how to hunt the way my grandfather taught me how to hunt. And our success rate went way up, and the word got out somehow, God, I guess, and that's when Field and Stream called, about asking about it, and then it just took off from there. So just, tracking and stalking whitetails is really what we're known for more than anything else. But we shoot some great moose and some great bears, and we do everything. I always tell people, if you can kill it and grill it in Maine, we do it.
That's a great slogan.
That's
Love
awesome.
it.
Yeah, it is. So,
Well,
yeah, go ahead, Brad. You had a question?
well, hunting those big woods has to be a lot different than hunting the Midwest here. Is it not, or do you use the same tactics?
It's funny you ask that, because I'll tell you, I never even knew there was such a thing as a tree stand until I went to Pennsylvania when I was 17 years old, and I called my grandfather from a payphone, and I said, "You ain't gonna believe this. All these people down here, they're sitting in trees." He goes, "Yeah, I heard of such a thing. They don't know any better." He goes, "Maybe they're trying to fly."
Oh, wow.
But, we stalk, and when we don't have tracking conditions, the bottom line is what I tell people all the time is, the way my family hunts compared to how most people hunt is, we hunt the way your great-grandfather did, and his father before him, and his father before him. They couldn't afford to sit and wait for a deer to come to them. They had to put food on the table to feed their family. So, when you think about, just how things are, if you learn how to, it's all about being a good woodsman. And when you're a woodsman, you read the country you're in and you adapt to that country. And, your farm country deer and your populated area deer spends their whole life on 1,000 acres or less. They may wander out to 1,500 or a little more than that during the rut, the bucks when they're ranging. But for the most part, they spend their whole life on 1,000 acres or less. Now, in the wilderness, they spend their whole life on 5 to 6 square miles. So the buck that goes by that scrape line every day or every other day in farm country and populated areas, in the big woods, they may be going by once a week, and it may be at night. So you could sit in a tree for the rest of your natural life waiting for a deer to come by.
Right.
So, my grandfather always said there are 2 ways and 2 ways only to consistently kill big bucks in the big woods. You either have got to go after them, or you've got to draw them to you. But either way, you've got to go to the deer first, and you can never expect that they're going to come to you because their range is so big.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much what we do. When people would ask my grandfather, "How do you keep killing these big bucks year in, year out?" him and my uncles, and they would say, when the ground is soft from sun, rain, or snow, track, because you can see a track. If not, cross-cut the wind and stalk. So that's what we're doing. We track when we have tracking conditions, and when we don't have tracking conditions, we stalk and adapt to the conditions the good Lord give us.
Yeah, and that's something, like you said, when you're here in the Midwest, that we can sit tree stands, we can do, because there's not a lot of areas. There's some, if we get up into like northern Wisconsin, some of the big woods areas, that we can still, track and stalk and do what we have to do. But, in some of these areas, like where we are in southern Wisconsin, there's people out there that own 5 acres and own,
Sure.
Ours is 40.
yeah, or 30 or 40 acres, sure. and they don't have, because, and it used to be, when I grew up, it was nothing, Randy, to go out there and talk to your neighbors and talk to everybody else. And we would all get together, and we would, make big drives and big groups, and they would let us hunt their property and things. And then all of a sudden, deer management came along, and then after deer management, it was CWD. And so then everybody started saying, no, we're going to shut it down. We're going to shut it down. And we still get along really well as neighbors, but it's, don't cross that line. If you shoot a deer, yeah, you got permission to come look for it, or
maybe
whatever,
shoot a wounded deer, if you see something that's wounded.
Yeah, or something coming through the woods wounded, And we've had that before, where we've seen it, and, you call your neighbor, send a text and say, hey, this deer is wounded and going, wherever on your property. Are you nearby, or should we go in after it? And that's pretty much, other than that, they shut it down. So we don't have that opportunity to really, go after and chase these deer, which I think people need to do it. I think they need to do it at least once to understand. When I go up north to northern Wisconsin and we bear hunt, we deer hunted a few times up there, but a lot of grouse hunting and different things. People don't understand those big woods.
No, they don't. And keep in mind, culture of an area dictates a lot too. Like, I'll give you a good example. I mean, I'm from Maine. It's the same size state as Pennsylvania with 12 million less people. You think about that, you know what I mean? So when you think about that, and a couple things I want to tell you. Number one is, Mainers are brought up this way: if you post your land, you have absolutely no right whatsoever to go on anybody else's. So nobody posts their land. And when someone comes from away, who buys a piece of land up there from out of state, and they come up there and post it, the locals will hunt it for spite. They trust me. They'll call each other up and say, hey, did you see them posted signs over on Route 1? Well, we're going to meet at the diner at 4 for breakfast, and then we're going to go hunt the guts out of it. They'll do that just for spite because, Maine is 2/3 wilderness. So the thought of anybody posting anything, all it does is make enemies. And, so I know the culture is different. Mm-hmm. And in regards to small pieces, I'll tell you a quick story. I had a guy is from Greencastle, Pennsylvania, named Matt, who hunted with me, and he's hunted with me several times. But he was up on a bear hunt, and we were talking. People were out, because of all the magazine exposure we get and all that stuff. People are always asking me about deer hunting. Only because, not that I'm anybody special, only because we basically hunt different than most people. I ain't nobody special, that's for sure. But he said, well, I'd love to do that. I'd love to try that. But he says, you can't do that where I live. I said, where do you live? He goes, South Central Pennsylvania, down by the Maryland line. I said, okay. He says, I says, so why can't you do it? He goes, well, there's too many small pieces. Everybody's posted their land. He says, you could never do that where I live. I said, just being inquisitive, I said, so let me ask you this. I said, do you have any state land near you? He goes, yeah, 20 minutes away, at Fort Loudon, the Tuscarora State Forest. He says, but I would never hunt there. I said, why is that? He goes, you can't find a parking spot. He says, there's 2 parking lots. It's a big state forest. He says, it's really big. It's thousands of acres. He goes, but he says, you can't find a parking spot. The roadways are lined with vehicles. The 2 parking lots are lined with vehicles. He goes, I've been avoiding that area my whole life. There's no way I would ever hunt there. I says, are you listening to me? He says, yeah. I said, nobody goes more than 200 yards in off the road.
Mm-hmm. You got that right. Yep.
I said, if you want me to teach you, I'll teach you. I says, but if you want to come up on a learn to track and stalk hunt, I'll teach you how to hunt on the ground and go after them. I says, and then when you go home, you go to that place, you get there early, you go in deep, and you got all the woods to yourself. Don't think the deer don't know that most people don't go more than 200 yards in off the road. Mm-hmm. And that was 12 years ago. And by the way, he came up on a learn to track and stalk hunt with me, and he shot a buck that field dressed at 274 pounds. And he came up another year, and he didn't shoot any, but he came on a learn to track. So he came on 2 years on a learn to track and stalk hunt to hone his skills. Well, after one of my seminars last week at the Harrisburg show, he came with his wife and 3 of his sons. They're all pretty much in their 20s and early 30s now. But he had 3 out of his 4 sons with him, and he showed me pictures, because he shows me pretty much every time I see him at Harrisburg. he showed me the pictures of the bucks that they killed this year. Now, in the last 10 years, he said he has killed 8 big bucks in that Fort Loudon, Tuscarora State Forest. And his sons have all killed at least 5. And he said, you know, I cannot believe I ignored that area for so long. I cannot believe it. He goes, you're 1,000% right. We're shooting good bucks in there. And I have not, in the last 10 years of hunting there, he says, I have seen one hunter in the woods about 250 yards. That's the deepest I've ever seen another hunter in the woods besides me and my boys. That's just how it is.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and me being me, growing up where I grew up, if I don't care what state I hunt. I mean, one of my best friends is a pastor in Indiana, and he's always trying to get me to hunt down there. Well, if I go to Indiana to hunt, I'm going to find the biggest piece of state or federal land in that state, and I'm going to hunt there, or I'm not going to go.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's because I'm going to hunt the way I want to hunt, and I want to go after my deer because I want that. My grandfather always said, you want that self-gratification. You want to know that you're the one, you and you alone are the reason why you got that deer. So, you know, it's just different. I have another guy from Springville, Pennsylvania, named Ed, who he's killed, you know, 8 or 9 deer with us up in Maine on the ground, came up on a couple learn the track and stock hunts. He's killed 14 in Pennsylvania, and he's killed 4 in Ohio, all on the ground. He don't even hunt out of a tree stand anymore. He does. Now listen to this. He does not even hunt his own 136-acre farm. He don't even hunt it anymore. He hunts state land because he knows if he goes in deep, he's got all the woods to himself, and that's where the big deer are.
Yeah, in a bigger tract of land, you know, even though like 120 acres or whatever you said he has, that's, you know, larger than our parcel. You know, it's bigger than ours. You know, it's a good chunk of land, but, you know, he's got that much more available to him by going on the public. Yeah,
another thing too, keep in mind, and believe me, I'm just telling you things that I was taught, you know, people don't know how to find big deer. Okay, my grandfather always said, and believe me when I tell you, my grandfather was a deer slaying machine. Okay, he you know, just unbelievable. Put it this way, he taught my Uncle Art, who was his brother-in-law, who was 16 years younger than him, and my Uncle Art killed 61 big bucks in his life with an 1876 Winchester and 45-60 with a 14-inch barrel. And Uncle Art killed 61 big bucks in his life, tracking and stalking. That's pretty impressive.
That is.
It? You know,
you got that right.
That's impressive.
So,
it's
so
his name, Randy. It's his name, Uncle Art. Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, my you know, my grandfather and my uncles, they always said the single biggest mistake, and I've been guiding for over 40 years, so I heard this from the time I was young, growing up with a family of guides and woodsmen. They used to say the single biggest mistake deer hunters make is they want to see, and if they hunt where they can't see, they're going to kill bigger bucks, and that's so true.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people want to sit in a spot where they can see 200 yards in 3 different directions. And you know, they go up in the open hardwoods and they see all the rubs and all the scrapes and all the tracks and all the scat, and they say, boy, I'm going to set up right here, without ever realizing all that sign was made at night. And, you know, another thing Grant used to say, no self-respecting big buck goes in the open hardwoods during daylight hours except for 2 reasons. They throw caution to the wind chasing a hot doe, or they're pushed there by something else. You know, if you want to find big bucks, you know, I don't care what state, what Canadian province, anywhere in North America, you want to find big bucks, the thicker, the quicker, the wetter, the better. That's where the big bucks are, where it's green and where it's wet. Where most people say there ain't no way am I going in there. you know, beaver flowages along brooks, along, you know, evergreens along the swamp. That's the best place on the planet to find big bucks.
Yeah, that's like here, you know, we've got the Wisconsin River, Mississippi River too, and you look at the public that runs along those rivers, and man, if you wanted to put in your time, and I've got some friends that want to put their time in, and you know, they take little boats and canoes, and
well, my brother is looking at doing
they
more
get
down
out
there
there
too.
Yeah, I mean, they get out there, man. There's some giant bucks out there they're killing.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because another thing too, it's just like our farm in North Carolina. It's right along the Great PD River, and you know, I've had people tell me forever the biggest deer in North Carolina run along the Great PD Yadkin River, because it's one and the same. In the north they call it the Yadkin, in the south they call it the PD. But I've had people tell me that forever. Not that I bought the property because of that reason, but you know, they say the biggest deer in the state run along the PD and the Yadkin. But people don't realize not only are brooks and streams and rivers travel routes, they're the deer's highways. Not only that, you know, deer look at water as a safety net. They don't believe danger is coming from the other side.
Right.
So that's another thing. That's another reason why they gravitate to the water.
Now, you know, you're in Maine. You look at, you know, Maine, and I've listened to you here for a little bit, and you talk about weight. You know, it's kind of like northern Wisconsin compared to southern Wisconsin. You get to northern Wisconsin, and they say, yeah, we shot a 270-pound field-dressed deer. It was a giant. You get down to southern Wisconsin, and all they talk about is score and antlers.
Sure. Yep.
You know, so how's the big difference, you know, in Maine too? Is it the same thing, or is it all body weight?
Well, I've never had a deer scored in my life. To my knowledge, no one in my family ever has. Also, nobody in my family has ever ambush hunted. They've never hunted out of a tree stand or a ground blind. But what we do in our family is we always mount them the way we kill them. And we always pull a tooth and get them aged. So we know how much they weigh, and we know how old they are. On the same token, where the whole weight thing started is back in the day, back in my grandfather and great-grandfather's day, you could take your kill, you could take your bad deer moose to the logging camps, and you could sell it to them. They would buy it from you and butcher it to feed the loggers. So the heavier the deer, bear, or moose weighed that they bought from you, the more money you made. So people learned as best they could to go after the biggest animals in the gene pool. But that's how the whole weight came about in Maine, you know, because you could literally, and they didn't want the horns. You could keep the horns in the head. They wanted the meat to feed the loggers, because the logging camps back in the day, they'd have, you know, many of them would have 200 or more lumberjacks in them, you know.
What an interesting story about the history there. And then, too, like, unlike, I think, what we tend to see around here and maybe other, you know, parts of the country, like, those were real weights, you know, because they weren't gonna buy based on an estimate, you know, they were, you know, weighing them. Where, like, here, you know, like, we always joke, right? Like every black bear is like a 300-pound bear, you know, and they're not putting them on a scale, you know, or people claim that, you know, they estimate their deer, and, you know, we hear how much a deer weighs. And I think, you know, around here, you know, in Wisconsin, like, they're not too often are people actually getting real weights. I mean, maybe a little bit more now with some
northern
of the hoists.
Wisconsin, they do.
I think the hoists, you know, having scales, you know, built into them, but there is still a lot of estimated weights going on around here, I think.
Well, I can tell you a little thing that the old timers used to do that I learned when I was a boy from my grandfather and my uncle. And we used to weigh our bears before we paunched them. You know what I mean? We'd hang them on the game pole and paunch them out and put get rid of their guts into buckets and then put them out for coyote bait. But a good formula to use when guessing a bear's weight is, all right, you take the dress weight of a bear, and then you cut that in half. Okay, and then you take that number and cut it in half again, and then you add that second number to the dress weight of the bear, and it's always within 10 or 15 pounds of what that bear actually weighed.
Okay.
Interesting.
Taking the water weight, of course you gotta figure that there's water and blood weight that they lost. So that's why we always say that it's within 10 or 15 pounds of, but that's about as accurate as, and that's how the old timers used to do it. Another thing in regards to the way we deer hunt, tracking and stalking is, you got to have the right tool for the trade. You know what I mean? Like I just finished, well, I shouldn't say I just finished. I wrote an article. Phil Machero, the editor for Gun Digest, asked me to write an article last year on the best guns for tracking and stalking deer. And it's out right now in the 80th edition, the 2026 Gun Digest, the article's out. And what I say in that article is what I tell everybody. And I used to guide out west, and I used to guide in Texas and the Rockies, and besides Maine. So, you got to have the right tool for the trade. So I tell people, whenever you're planning a hunt, okay, think about the game you're hunting and the terrain you're hunting, and then choose your weapon. Okay, and if you're going to hunt like a sniper, by all means use a sniper rifle, a bolt-action scope rifle. It's the perfect weapon to use when you have the time to take that perfect shot. But if you're tracking and stalking, if you're hunting like a combat soldier on the ground and on the move, you want an iron-sighted, fast-shooting, fast-handling carbine that puts a lot of lead in the air in a hurry. It's the same principle. My family's hunted with 16 and 14-inch barrel iron-sighted Winchester lever guns for 6 generations because they're the right tool for the trade. You got to have the ability to shoot fast. That's why the old timers always called trackers and stalkers jump shooters, because that's pretty much what we are. We track them until we jump them out of their bed and shoot them, or we stalk through the woods and jump them out of their beds and shoot them. Yeah. You got to have the ability to shoot fast.
Mm-hmm.
So what your theory is if letting and flying shit ain't dying?
Well, I'll tell you this much: a couple things. That's great. Of course, I tell everybody in my seminars, make sure you target safety first.
Sure.
Make sure you target.
Oh yeah.
But once you assure your target and you start shooting, you keep shooting until the animal's on the ground and he ain't moving.
Mm-hmm.
In my country, this 60,000 black bear in Maine. Between bobcats and lynx, and there's not a lot of wolves, but there's wolves. And there's so many predators. You owe it to the animal. So as far as shooting, absolutely. Two things. My grandfather used to tell us when we were younger, when he was teaching us, him and my uncles, he'd say, if I ever hear you shoot, I'm going to get a compass reading on you. And when I get to you, if the animal's still on his feet, if you have any bullets left in your gun, we're going to have to go to the hospital to get my foot dug out of your hind end.
Yep.
And when my grandfather would shoot a big buck, people would say, how'd you get him? He'd say, I put up a lead fence.
Nice.
But it's true. You got to have the right tool for the trade.
Yeah.
Yes.
Now, Randy, you listed off a whole, slew of game that is available or that people can hunt there out of your camp. Do you use the same technique for all of those big game animals that you mentioned?
We track how we find our animals is we track. Tracks don't lie. Tracks don't lie. And the track, you always, just how I was taught from a young boy, tracks, you eliminate the tracks. The tracks will take you to the blood and the hair And that's how you're going to find your animals. If you concentrate completely on looking for blood and hair and not eliminating the tracks, my grandfather and my uncles always, which is so true, you're going to find a little more than half of the animals you shoot. But if you learn how to track, you're gonna find 98% of them, which is so true. So yeah, we're trackers. That's what we do, and not just for deer, but that's what we're known for. But we track. Whatever we got to track, we're tracking it. I've even my granddaughter's 8. She can already tell you the difference between a buck track and a doe track, which direction it's going. I try to fool her with coyote tracks and dog tracks and from our dog and everything else. 8 years old, you ain't fooling her now. She, she's just not doing. Start them young. Another thing too to keep in mind. 3 things that guides talk about most when they get together. And I do seminars at a dozen or more shows every year, not to mention NRA banquets and a lot of private seminars. The 3 things guides talk about the most when they get together. Number 1 is how we are amazed at the people out there who hunted. Many of them have hunted their whole lives without ever learning how to use a compass. And we scratch our head in wonderment. And the sad part of it is these people, God bless them, they don't have any idea how much more success they would have had in their hunting life if someone had taught them how to use a compass when they were young. I promise you this, they would have a whole lot more big bucks on the wall, without question. Number 2 subject that guides talk about the most is people's inability to shoot fast, which costs them dearly. And number 3 is inability to deliver fast follow-up shots. Them 3 things in my 40-plus years of guiding, them 3 things right there are the 3 biggest detriments that I see that hunters have. And it's just, I've learned that through experience. Not only that, I heard it all from the time I was little, listening to my grandfather, my uncles, and all friends and other friends of the family that were guides. Yeah. Because guiding is an industry in Maine. You got to get your license. It's very hard to get your license. And because Maine's a poor state, there's an old saying in Maine, you log, you farm, you guide, or you starve. And that's pretty much it. Unless you're a lobster fisherman or a fisherman along the coast. Mm-hmm. That's how Maine is. There's not a lot of people.
Well, I agree with all 3 of those things that you said and how they would all be helpful. And even like the compass and orienteering, our daughters both live out west. The younger one is in Utah, and she doesn't hunt, but she's out there backcountry skiing, hiking in the, hiking, mountain biking, doing these, other things out, including in some backcountry. And I got her a compass for Christmas, not this past year, but the year before. And, I think she kind of chuckled a little bit maybe, but, there's kind of this thought that, well, I've got my phone and it has, I've got GPS, or, my friends or my, hunting partners, what have you, they have a compass, they know where they are, where we're going to be. And I said, I don't want you to have to depend on somebody else.
Good for you.
Or to depend on the technology, because you may not get a signal. The battery might die. Or what if the person that's with you gets injured and they can't guide you out?
God bless you. Good for you.
I don't know how much she's put towards learning to use it and using it, but I got her an honest to God, good compass. And it came with instructions that she's smart, so she could figure it out. But I want her to survive on her own.
Yeah, I could teach anybody in less than 5 minutes how to be proficient with a compass, and good for you. Good for you for doing that. A couple things. I tell everybody in every seminar I do that GPS stands for getting properly screwed up. If I got paid for everybody I've had to look for lost with a GPS since they become popular, I could pay cash for a new pickup. Okay, people rely on them, and if you're in the green growth where the big deer are, you ain't going to get a reading anyway.
That's right.
Right, and if you go on Brunton Compass's website, it says Field and Streams. Randy Flannery says he never enters the woods without at least 3 Brunton Compasses. I've never owned a Brunton Compass. I reckon they ought to be sending me royalty checks. and it says, Flannery says, the GPS runs off of satellites and batteries, which are man-made, and the compass runs off the Earth's magnetic field, which is God-made. Which would you rather trust? And I do say that. Mm-hmm. And good for you. And I'm going to give you a little bit of thing to add to that compass. I don't know. And good for you for insisting that your daughter has one, because they'll save your life. I don't know if you ever heard of the essentials, but the essentials were once taught to every family living remote in America, and they'll save your life. And I never, ever, ever enter the woods without them, no matter what woods I'm entering. Okay. Number one is 3 compasses. Why 3 compasses? Because if you carry 2 compasses and one breaks, which one's right? By carrying 3, you always have 2 to compare. 3 fire starters, be it flint and steel, wooden matches dipped in paraffin wax, or a windproof, waterproof lighter. You should always have 3 fire starters. A good knife, a good flashlight, extra batteries, a topo map of the area you're going into. Those are the essentials that you should never, ever enter the woods without, no matter what you're doing, because they'll save your life. And I dress light because I never stop, okay? I'm always on the track. So besides the essentials, I carry my gun, my cartridge belt, my drag rope. I have a fold-up space blanket in my pocket, and I may have a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and a bottle of water. That's it, So, but I make sure I have the essentials. Mm-hmm. And I can tell you, to be honest with you, if my mother and my grandmother ever knew how many sweaters I left in the woods from being overheated, they would have killed me.
So, kind of fill us in on, the bird hunting out there. Because I'm listening to you, we're kind of assuming that the moose are the same thing. You find the tracks, you track them. And then you hunt them, and I don't know, what the rules and regs are in Maine for moose, how long it takes to draw a tag, and do you have a size restriction or no size restriction? But I think that, that's part of why you go with a guide, number one, is because they understand all those rules and regulations. But, it sounds like, correct me if I'm wrong, that's how you guys are hunting them. But what about the bird hunting in those big, in that big woods like that?
Well, in regards to the moose, you're right. Tracks don't lie. That's how we scout them. And then we locate big bulls, and we go back in and call them. We don't just ride the roads looking for a track. I mean, looking for a moose. Anybody can do that. You don't need a guide for that. And as far as bird hunting goes, it's near and dear to my heart. Matter of fact, I gave up guiding out west because I missed bird hunting in Maine so much. It's near and dear to our heart because of when we were young, before my grandfather would teach, or my uncles, and my grandfather set the rules, would teach any of us how to track and stalk whitetails. We first had to spend at least 2 seasons with one of them bird hunting, because Grandpa always said you first must learn how to hunt slow and react fast. So until they thought we were ready, they would not teach us how to track and stalk whitetails until we were ready, and they found how ready we were by bird hunting. So another thing, we weren't allowed to whine, as they put it. We weren't allowed to whine about recoil either. We started out with 12 gauges at 8, 9 years old, and if we said anything, they'd say, well, why don't we do this? Why don't you take your dress off and go put a pair of pants on and a pair of boots and act like a grown-up and we'll teach you. Don't be whining about that stuff to us. Another thing, too, that's just how we were brought up. Another thing, like when we were growing up, we did not dare, and I mean we did not dare tell my grandfather or my uncles or some of my older cousins that we weren't seeing any deer or deer sign. We didn't dare, because they would say, "Oh, so you're getting lazy."
Uh-huh.
You know, so you're lazy. Huh? You know, are you wearing a dress? Take it off, put on a pair of boots and a pair of pants, and go get your feet on the ground and go find them. Don't come around with that stuff with us. And that's just how we were. That's how it was. That's just how it was.
That's funny.
That is. That's hilarious. So
you got good bird hunting out there?
Great bird hunting. You know, matter of fact, Field and Stream about 5-6 years ago did a article on the top 5 grouse destinations in the country, and they picked the Maine, New Brunswick, Canada border as the number 1.
Nice. So do you have a dog?
Yeah,
do you have a dog then, or just send the boys in?
Oh, we have a dog, and we have several guides who have dogs. You know, you know, it's. I tell everybody, with a good dog, you can expect 1 dozen to 2 dozen flushes a day.
Nice.
You know, and we do have native woodcock, and when the flight comes in, they're everywhere. You know, but yeah, we're very fortunate because we have unlimited ground to hunt. You know, I mean, just unlimited. I've chased snow. I'll give you a good example. I've chased snow my whole life. Like if we got a dusting or 1, 2, 3 inches of snow where we live, I mean, if I'm not guiding, or even if I am guiding, if the person I'm guiding is game to do it, you know, I'll be calling my friends up north. How much snow you got? If I got 2, 3 inches down where we are, and they got 5, 6, 7 up north, I'm going up north. I'm chasing snow. And people say, how do you go up and hunt places that you don't know? And I say, tracks don't lie. Tracks don't lie. You know, a good tracker should be able to tell you the difference between a buck track and a doe track in the snow or in the gravel when they're driving 10, 15 miles an hour in their truck. And it has nothing to do with dew claws. That's an old wives' tale. All deer have dew claws. The heavier the deer, the more they show. You know, a good tracker should also be able to tell you within the first half mile on the track if that buck has been up chasing does all night and he wants to lay down and he's got a good chance of killing them, or he's going from one doe group to another and he's probably never going to catch up to him. A good tracker should also be able to tell you within the first half mile on the track, within 20 to 30 pounds of what that deer weighs and what kind of headgear it has, just by following the track. If you know how to track, reading the track is like reading a book. The buck is literally telling you not only about itself, but what it's thinking about doing.
Randy, I have to go back. You were talking about, you know, it sounds like your you know, grandpa and uncles were, you know, making men out of you at a young age. Did you have any female cousins?
They were making men out of the girls too.
So what did they say? So if the girls were complete, yeah, what would they say? The girls, the exact same thing.
Same thing. Let me tell you something. There's an old saying in northern Maine, and there's a similar saying out west that I learned when I was guiding out west. But there's an old saying in northern Maine: dogs and horses are like kids. No, kids are like dogs and horses. If you baby them, they're going to be babies.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, in the West, they say, and it's passed on from family to family, ranch to ranch, raise your girls to be boys, and you won't have drama and heartache.
Mm-hmm.
That's true.
Yeah, my dad and several of his brothers. Now, I talk about my grandfather and my uncles. That's on my mom's side. My father's side, my dad and his brothers, you know, they were boxers, and you know, they used to make the girls put the boxing gloves on with us boys growing up all the time. And I'll be honest with you, my sister Mary Beth was 2 years older than me, and she was like lightning. She used to box my ears in all the time.
Oh, love it.
So,
That's awesome.
That is funny.
So, Randy, what can people expect there at the lodge as far as accommodations and things like that?
Okay. First of all, we own a square mile of land with a mile of lake frontage. It's very secluded. Our driveway's a mile long going into it. Our lodge is right on the lake shore. Sharon's goal is everybody puts on at least 10 pounds. She makes homemade warm bread every meal. The meals are all you can eat, literally all you can eat. The lodge has, 2 big living rooms, 3 kitchens, 5 bathrooms, 8 bedrooms, and plus we have a couple of cabins on top of that, But she makes, for bear hunting, she makes 3 all-you-can-eat meals a day. For bird, deer hunting, snowshoe hare and grouse and woodcock. She makes an all-you-can-eat breakfast and supper and gives them a bag lunch to take with them. But she makes bag lunches like the sandwiches are on homemade warm rolls, and she goes all out. And I think that's a big part of why 74% of our customers are repeats.
Sure, it is. It's about the whole experience.
Oh yeah,
that you provide.
Yeah, but I'll tell you something. I tell everybody she's the cook and the bouncer, so they better stay on her good side.
That's right. That's right. Where can people find you and the lodge? Tell us how people can get in touch with you.
Sure. Well, if they Google my name, all kinds of stuff will pop up. Randy Flannery. All kinds of magazine articles and all kinds of stuff. On top of that, info@wildernessescape.com or www.wildernessescape.com is a great way to get a hold of us. And, we are on Upper Hot Brook Lake. And our phone number is 207-448-3238. And, we will answer any and all questions. We also, another big success story with us is my son Scott and I do a tracking and stalking school, where people come for 3 days, and we do these in the summertime. They come for 3 days, and we teach them tracking and stalking skills. We not only like a classroom type thing in the lodge, we take them out and show them tracks and what to do when you jump a deer, what to do if you jump a deer and he sees you first, how to get up on him in all conditions, no matter what the conditions are, get close enough for a shot, how to react to that buck when you jump him, whether he sees you first or not, so you can put yourself in a position to get a shot at him, if not immediately within the next half hour to an hour. And we take them out to a pit, and we take them shooting, and we teach them different techniques on how to practice, how to shoot fast. One of the articles they did on me years ago in Field and Stream was how to train yourself to shoot a rifle like a shotgun. Never close one eye, ignore the rear sight, concentrate on the front sight, put the front sight on the target, and keep shooting. And what I just explained to you, to be honest with you, is exactly how the military teaches combat shooting. Same thing.
Yep.
So we last year our first deer school sold out in 3 days. The second one sold out in 5. And you'd be amazed at people. We have people driving in flying in from all over the country just to come for a 3-day deer school. But what happens is, between the deer school and our learn to track and stalk hunt, people not only have more success hunting up in Maine, but they take the techniques that we taught them and they take them home to their home states and wherever they hunt, and they have more success. So it's very gratifying because you're helping people. You know, what's God want us to do? Help our fellow man. You know what I mean? So you're helping people.
Yep. Sounds like you found your purpose, Randy.
Well, you know, let me tell you this, and I thank you for saying that. But I will tell you, my wife Sharon is the brains and the brawn of the operation, without question, and she's the hardest working person that we have at our place, and she holds everything together. Mm-hmm. And you know, people don't realize the importance of having. You know the old saying, behind every good man is a good woman. It's working together and being on the same page.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I was just gonna say that. You know, the old saying, behind every good man or every successful man is a good woman, and I truly believe that. You know, I've same thing here in the house. If it wasn't for Michelle and all the stuff she does behind the scenes, I don't know, man. I think I'd be a Walmart greeter.
I actually think that the three of us had that conversation at one of the shows, because I remember saying to you how fortunate you are to have Michelle with you all the time. You know, because Sharon doesn't usually do. You know, she goes to the Harrisburg show with me to mind the booth while I'm doing seminars, and you know, she goes to a couple, and she goes to the NRA convention with me, and you know, there's a few shows that she does, but she doesn't go to a lot of shows with me because her mom's been ill and she's been trying to help out with her mom, and I get it. You know what I mean? I get it.
Yeah.
But you're very blessed to be able to be together and do things together, because isn't that why you get married in the first place?
Absolutely.
Yep, you find your person. Yep. Well, it sounds like we'll have to come out to Maine then if we want to meet Sharon, huh?
Yeah, and well, maybe one of these times, you know, I can talk her into. I would say, you know, I can throw a loop around her and drag her with me, but she's tougher than me. You know, she's tougher than me, so I don't want to do too much. And Michelle, she's just a peanut, just like you, but she's tough as nails.
Yeah, we have to be.
But yeah. But no, we'd love to have you come up sometime. Absolutely.
That'd be good.
Yeah.
Well,
absolutely.
I'm looking forward to seeing you here in a few weeks out in Ohio.
Absolutely.
And sure appreciate you for being on with us today.
Well, thanks. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. It's always great to get to visit with you a little bit. I'm looking forward to seeing you in Ohio and Wisconsin, and you know, it's always great to see you.
Yeah. And for all the listeners out there, I think Randy gave us really a lot of pointers that we can take with us wherever it is we're hunting, about tracking your animals, getting far in off the road on your public lands and in big woods, your essentials for being out in the wilderness. Take all that information and own the season.
Follow Own the Season Podcast on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for listening.
Check back weekly for new episodes.